Mahindra's Kandivali factory right here on the outskirts of Mumbai, and who better than Rajesh Jejurikar himself to walk me through not just how the quarterly numbers were, but what really is M&M's vision for both the auto as well as the farm division. Rajesh, thank you so much for taking time out and inviting ET now to your beautiful Kandivali facility.
Thanks so much for being here. It's very much Mumbai now.
It is very much Mumbai, yes.
Not even the outskirts.
For some of us who live in South Mumbai, we still feel that it's the outskirts.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But tell me, Rajesh, let's first address the elephant in the room, which is the earnings. It has been a steady quarter, auto, farm division, everything has delivered on par. But are there still things that you feel could have been better in the quarterly numbers?
Yeah, firstly, so it was a very good quarterly performance from our standpoint. It's our highest ever revenue, very high revenue growth, even sequentially a very good revenue growth. Second highest PBIT for the auto farm business. So overall, we think a very strong performance. Clearly, we had some supply chain challenges on the auto side, more coming out of China, the lockdowns that had happened in China. On the tractor side, the industry turned out to be better than we thought it would in quarter one. A lot of stimulus came out of the wheat exports that had started, and when there was a wheat export ban that came in, we saw some slowdown. Overall, the monsoons have been very good, with the exception of 2 or 3 states which have had some kind of a lag. So we think rural will be steady through the year. It's not going to this year see the kind of upswing we saw 2 years back, but will be steady. Overall, I think we've gained tractor market share. All our brands are doing extremely well on the auto and the tractor side. Electric three-wheelers is doing very well. We have a 74% market share. That segment is all set to get into a big upswing as well.
Yes, that it is, and I'm going to come to that. But let me first talk a little bit more about the quarterly numbers. Clearly supply side constraints still remain an issue.
Yeah.
And engines, as per my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, it seems that there are a few constraints and bottlenecks. What is it that you're doing to resolve them? Because I remember during COVID when we were chatting, you said that semiconductor is a 3,000 rupee chip which is creating havoc in the industry. Are things anywhere getting close to resolution?
Yeah. So many things in the supply chain have got resolved. A lot of the problems we had 12 months back on supply chain were related to the basic ECU chip. That's all behind us.
Okay.
Now
so no more semiconductor chip issue?
No more ECUs, which are engine control unit related chips, right? But as you see a new portfolio, the Scorpio N, which we'll probably get into in a moment, and the XUV 700, each of these has 200 chips. They're like a set of computers.
Oh, okay.
Just the smart core that we have has more than 20 or 25 chips, which come in from multiple different suppliers, like Texas Instruments, so on and so forth. So it's not a question of managing 1 or 2 chips per car. This is like managing 200 plus chips for getting your supply chain completely closed. And they come in from multiple sources. So what's changed is in the last few months, and the reason we still have constraints, is our new portfolio is very high-end, very advanced by way of technology, and all the demand that we're getting is for the highest end version of that. Right? So we are managing chips now of a very different scale than what we were 1 year back, before we had the 700 and so on. So that's really been the challenge. But that being said, we've, even in the SUV space, we are now revenue market share number 1 for 6 months in a row. We are number 2 or 3 by volume. So even though we say that volume is a constraint because of supply, I think we have to calibrate it to the fact that demand is significantly higher than supply. Supply is not that far off from what our current capacities and plans are.
Well, they say there's always sunshine after a cloudy day. Here it is. So tell me, is there really sunshine irrespective of all the clouds of supply constraints? Because like you yourself said, your bookings are way higher than maybe the capacities that you're running at. What do you do then in such a situation? Do you increase capacity, or will that always be a roadblock because the supply in any case is strained?
No, we are moving ahead and investing in creating newer capacities for all our SUV portfolio. In fact, most parts of our portfolio, including pickups. We are very buoyant and positive and optimistic about the future. So we are making all the investment. In fact, in the last analyst meet, we had put out numbers of the additional capex that we're doing for capacity. I think that was in the region of 1900 odd crores. So all of that is underway. We are ramping up capacities, but in this business it does take time to get capacities on board. We are working with a multiple set of suppliers. They've got to ramp up as well. It's not just us in our factories. Yeah. So that whole thing I think will get us fully ready in the next 8 to 10 months.
Oh, and in specific when I talk about SUVs, because they are the ones which are hottest in demand from the Mahindra stable, given that bookings are far more and for some of your cars the waiting is as long as 2 years, what do you do to ramp up capacity, or are you already in the process, specifically for SUVs?
Yeah, so in the SUV space, basically we are currently producing XUV 700 at a rate of about 6,000 a month.
Okay.
We are going to be producing Scorpio N at a rate of about 6,000 a month. So both, and then we have the Scorpio Classic, which is on top of the Scorpio N. So that's the current level that we are operating in. Now there may be some supply shortage in the short term which impact the output, but otherwise we are basically in that range. Now what we're talking about is a significant step up from here, and that's going to take time. We've triggered that a few months back, so during the course of the next few months we'll start seeing that capacity move up to higher levels.
The other thing, Rajesh, that I also wanted to talk about, the fact that raw material prices have been so volatile and there's almost been a 20% cool off, but still auto companies are not increasing their margin guidance, including you. Why is that?
I don't know where you get the number of 20% cool off. It's not been as much as that. We have firstly to calibrate that a lot of the cool off that people are talking about is the cool off that happened after the Feb-March increase, right? So Feb-March saw a huge increase after the Russia-Ukraine war. There's been some cooling off from that. Now, typically most auto companies would have contracts and would have inventory that you're carrying over as you roll over. So for the new material cost to come into your production, it does take phasing, and which is why we are seeing the real effect of that would be visible in the second half of the year, because you have contracts and you have inventory. So for new costs to come in, it's going to take into the second half of the year.
And that's when there will be margin uptick.
But there is still, the costs are still way higher than 18 months back. Right, so when you look at the graph starting from, let's say, June 2020 to now, we saw a huge increase and then that kept going up, and now there's some cooling from there, right? We've seen more than 20% increase in the last 20 odd months. This is unprecedented, this kind of increase in commodity.
Yeah, it's like crude has fallen from 130 to 90, but not enough for us to find it comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when we look at material costs, there are also things which come out of crude. All the plastics in the car, all of those have not come down, right? So we're just looking at one element and then saying, oh, that's gone up 20%.
Sure.
Or we may say aluminium has gone up so much, but there's not that much aluminium in the car that it is going to
do you have any visibility on commodity costs and when things will come back to normalcy or pre-Ukraine Russia?
It's like me asking what will happen to the stock market tomorrow.
I can tell you that. I'm kidding.
The day you get that right, I'll tell you what will happen to commodity price.
Only gods have the answer to that. But okay, at a group level, what I also wanted to understand was what role does Pininfarina play for the Mahindra group per se? Because like you were telling me before we started our chat, that there are two companies, one is not under Mahindra and Mahindra. Please tell our viewers a little bit about it.
So we have a Pininfarina design company based in Italy, in Torino. That is a service that Tech Mahindra offers its customers.
Okay.
Right? So M&M Auto Business is like a customer to Pininfarina, the design company. We've also try to convert the brand value of Pininfarina, make it relevant for high-end automotive customers. And there's a separate company which is headquartered in Munich called Automobili Pininfarina. Automobili Pininfarina is going to bring to the market in the next 3 months a hyper-electric car. The price of that hyper-electric car is 2 million euro.
Okay, they're going to bring this car in India?
We are not going to bring this car.
Yeah, that's what I was like, $2 million?
2 million euro.
Euro, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to start sale of that in the next 2 months or so.
Okay.
So it's going to be like a limited edition specialist car for those who are, the passionate car lovers. It's all electric. very, very well scored. You know, BBC Top Gear did a story on it a couple of months back. So the Batitsa is really a beautiful car. You must check it out.
I will when it gets launched, sure. So, what's the visibility that you have on what kind of numbers could it add to M&M?
It's going to be a limited edition car, the Batitsa. We're not going to sell large numbers of it.
Yeah,
It's for
sure.
specialists, like I just said. So, right now what we've said is that's the plan for Automobili Pininfarina. We're not going to add in a new part of the product portfolio unless we get some new investors who are going to come in and take that story forward. But as things stand now, Automobili Pininfarina has one product, the Batitsa, which will be launched in the next 2 or 3 months.
Will they also be rubbing off on the design capabilities of the Desi M&M cars here on the roads?
Well, you know, quite separately, we've set up a whole new design center in the UK for our auto and farm business, which is in Banbury in UK. And we now have about 30-40 designers based there, and we hired Pratap Bose, who is the chief of design for the auto farm sectors based there. So we're building a lot of design capability ourselves and very good design capability in the auto farm business.
Okay. You know, the one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't want to get this wrong, that the tractor demand outlook, considering states like UP, Bihar, West Bengal, the rainfall has been below normal. And given that, you know, that equates or amounts to 35% of the tractor demand, what visibility do you have? Would you say that this is just an aberration because this year monsoon was subpar? When can things begin to look up?
Yeah, so you know, in any year in the tractor market, you will have some states which are going to do very well, and some states which won't do well. There's very rarely a time when every part of the country gets very good monsoons and everything else is right for the crop in each state, right? So it's a part of the tractor industry, which is what makes it so interesting. That demand is very, very hyper-local and all the solutions have to be very hyper-local. So typically when we look at a national average of tractor industry, it's just a weighing of the industry sizes of different states. But really each state constitutes in its own way a market completely different from another state. So you're right that rainfall deficit is there in the 4 or 5 eastern states, and those industries may see a slower impact. Though UP, which is the largest chunk of that, has a very good reservoir level, has very good irrigation, and is generally less dependent on monsoons than some other states which are low on irrigation and low on reservoir levels. But that being said, we hence have a very cautious outlook for the tractor industry for this year, which is in the region of 3 to 5%. Because overall, while rural demand has improved, we don't see it having the momentum that it had year and a half back. And 2 key reasons for that. One is the terms of trade to the farmer are not as attractive. That means the input inflation is much higher than the output inflation to the farmer. The second is the government spending on ag and rural is much lower than it was a year back. Now both of these do weigh in on the overall rural sentiment. But the positive news is large parts of the country monsoon is very good, and that is going to lead to a very positive festival season.
Lastly, Rajesh, does it worry you at all that your stock has risen almost 50%, now nearing 1300 per share? The speed at which you've seen the escalation in the stock prices.
No, actually it's not at all worrying, because what had happened up until now is most analysts and investors were undervaluing our auto business.
Okay.
Right? Now, what we're seeing right now is a re-rating of the auto business.
Yeah.
And that's happening because of the successes that we're seeing on the SUV side, plus an implied valuation coming out of the new EVCo with an investment from BII, which valued the new EVCo business at a $9 billion, right? So the effect of that is now what is driving the stock price up, because the auto business was really completely undervalued. Completely undervalued.
Are they valuing it right still, or should it be higher?
Still undervalued.
It's still undervalued? Okay. We'll take a cue from that. And on that note, we are already at the much talked about, the hottest selling car, which saw 1 lakh bookings in 30 minutes of its opening. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, Scorpio N. And Rajesh, you have to take me for a spin in this car.
Let's go.
Let's go. So Rajesh, let's now go for a spin. The much talked about Scorpio N. I can't believe I'm actually getting a drive with you in this car.
No, it's quite an amazing drive experience. It's totally refined.
It is. It's just really smooth. It is. But tell me, 1,000 bookings in 30 minutes? Did you anticipate that?
100,000.
1 lakh, sorry. I stand corrected. 1
Yeah.
lakh bookings in 30 minutes. Did you anticipate such a huge response?
We anticipated that quantum of booking because we could get a sense from the add to cart, which is the new feature we had created where customers could decide the variant, color and all of that, and we call that add to cart, borrowing from the e-commerce guys.
Sure.
So we knew that had crossed well over 100,000. But we didn't think that it will convert so quick. So quick. So we knew that the kind of bookings we would get would be in that order of magnitude, but 25,000 was in the first minute. So it's quite phenomenally. It feels very humbling to get that kind of a response to a product. And now that you're sitting in it, you can see why people are.
Yeah, I can see. I love the leather interiors. It's a beautiful color. And it's just so comfortable and so spacious.
Yeah.
And with a sunroof as well. I mean, you've really elevated, the design aspects of M&M and what the cars used to be to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a very different level of refinement. You can see the engine noise, when you drive it, the pep of the acceleration, all of that makes it now comparable to the best in the world, and at prices which are really creating a great value proposition. So, dimensionally, this is like a D-segment car, and even from a feature offering, it's comparable to D-segment cars, and at a price which is 70% lower. So we really are in a way enabling people to experience the best at prices that they can afford, and so you get so many more people.
But tell me, what is it with the urban Indians liking only SUVs now? I was going through a report the other day which said that by 2026, the market share of SUVs could actually hit maybe 56%. I couldn't believe those figures.
Well, it's 50% now already.
Okay.
So 50% of the Indian market, not just urban, is SUVs.
Why?
So multiple things, right? So firstly, what is a real SUV and what's not? And we actually internally use a terminology of what we call core SUVs, which should have a certain kind of ground clearance, a certain seat height, posture, so that you get the SUV-ishness. But the general definition is much broader. But even in that definition, from the standpoint of an Indian consumer, there is that need to feel in control, and an SUV enables you to do that. Even if it's a smaller SUV, you still feel relative to a sedan. That's one thing. The other thing is, in India, typically we have many more people who live in joint families or have visiting parents a few times a year. And people do want a vehicle which gives them more greater flexibility. They want to go out on a vacation together, or you go to even just go to the airport or stations to pick up people. You need a few extra seats. So that, I think, is a very Indian thing as well. And coming to really the essence of what a core SUV is, and which is why we think we've really hit the sweet spot with these three products: Thar, the XUV700 and the Scorpio N.
And 300 also.
And the 300 is done very well. Yeah. Is that, post-COVID, we really believe that in a way we were all, let's call it, imprisoned. If that
Not in a way, we were.
Yeah, exactly. So when we launched Thar in 2020, August 15th, we actually launched it on August 15th to represent freedom.
Absolutely.
And it's these kind of products which are going to help you explore the impossible, to try and go and do different things in your life. And even if everything else around you is shut, you can always get out in your car and get away. And it's, I think, that exploration which is really getting people to want to own bigger cars and things which let them do things differently and get away from the mundaneness of the everyday living.
Sure. Where could this market share for you, purely for SUVs, reach to, say, in the next 5 years?
Well, we've started measuring our market share by way of revenues, because our products our average selling price is much higher than the rest of the players,
SUV
because
segment,
because we make bigger cars and so on. So we think the revenue market share is a good representation of how we think about our business. We are number one right now. We'll want to strengthen our position as we go ahead. The current portfolio is already very exciting with 4-5 products, and as we've spoken about earlier, as we ramp up capacities, we'll fully leverage the opportunity. So let me just, without giving a specific number or targeted market shares, would want to remain a strong number one.
Why don't you give me specifics? I mean, you're already saying that it's at 50%. Are we looking
No, that's
at
the industry.
75% industry?
That's the
I mean,
industry.
could the industry scale up to 75% and then you enjoy and cherish the dominant share of that pie?
Yeah, so from an industry standpoint, we don't talk about our numbers because that becomes guidance that we've got to be consistent in how we do it.
Industry.
Yeah, so industry is today in the range of, SUVs to cars is 50-50 approx. We think that will be about 57 to 60. That's our guess in the next 4 to 5 years. And that's in line with what the split is in many other parts of the world as well. So that would be very consistent with global norms on how SUV and other sedans would play out.
Yeah.
It's unlikely to move to 70-75%. I think that's being unreal because there is a set of customers who want smaller cars.
Yeah, and who want their sedans.
Who want the sedans, who want the ease of, moving around a small city on small roads in cities. So I don't think that market that segment is going to disappear completely. There is the whole fleet segment which buys, the shared mobility vehicles. They are not going to buy SUVs. So there is going to be a market which is going to be there for sedans. So I think 55-60% SUV as a percentage to cars is a good expectation to have.
Sure. But is your focus going to be SUVs, or is Mahindra going to venture into sedans as well?
No, we are very clear that we are going to be an SUV focused company. And in fact, we've defined based on what we think are the strengths of our brand, which is our brand DNA. The space we want to play in is to create authentic SUVs, which are high on adventure capability. So, in a way, when I use the term brand, explore the impossible, that's what we have identified as a brand idea. So the brand idea is to enable our customers to explore the impossible. So really what we are working on are standout vehicles with unmissable presence, which have very authentic style and design, and which help customers to explore the impossible, and in a sustainable way. So we'll also have a very strong electric portfolio of SUVs, but we're going to stay in the SUV segment.
But is it possible at all to reduce the waiting period for Scorpio N from 2 years to any lesser?
No, we will be working very hard to improve capacities and bring the waiting period down. Hopefully we're going to deliver more than 20,000 between 26th September and the end of December, which is the first lot of deliveries that would happen starting 26th September.
Okay. The other thing I also wanted to talk about was that, given that waiting period, purely because of supply side issues and capacities, is so long, does it worry you that you're going to miss out on the volumes? Because there will always be some other player with a waiting period of 6 months or lesser. And considering this is such a hot competitive segment, the urban SUVs, who's going to take that share away from you?
Yeah, actually, Ayesha, the bigger concern that I have is customers who are waiting and are not happy because they are waiting.
Yeah.
So
2 years is a really long way.
To our mind, that's a bigger concern.
So what do you do?
We have to work harder and try and ramp up faster and quicker, and we're in the process of triggering of everything so that we can enable that. The point on customers moving out, we've not seen that play out. I mean, it's now more than 8-10 months since we launched the 700, and there is a long waiting period. We've not had the average book cancellation in the region of 10-12%, so that's not a lot. And customers are booking new vehicles in very large numbers now, knowing that the wait period is 20-22 months. So those customers are not as dissatisfied as the customers who...
Yeah, but maybe new won't come saying that, the waiting period is so much.
The new are coming at the rate of 9,000 to 10,000 a month.
Okay.
Knowing that the waiting period is 22 months. So that's, I think, a very strong testimony to the value proposition. Because in a way today, my insight around this is the value proposition is so strong. So if someone knows that they already have a vehicle. They don't need one right now. If they know that they want to change one a year and a half later, they're just going ahead and doing the booking. You book now so that whenever it comes, then we'll sell what we have, right? So a lot of people are in that mindset right now that it's okay if it comes after a year and a half. It still is a very strong value proposition because you're not going to get anything like this at this price point.
So EVs or ICs, is there any focus there, or is it going to be a comfortable split, 50-50?
No, in the short term, so we've basically said in the year 2027, we would expect in SUVs the ratio between EVs and ICE to be in the region of 20 to 30%.
Okay.
So we think that would be a very
Is that
good
the
plan.
future for SUVs?
That will be a future, but not like I said. If we're talking now 5 years later, we're saying 20 to 30% of the market will be EVs for our portfolio. That still leaves a very substantial ICE portfolio of 70%.
Absolutely,
So it's still time. So I guess we have to manage with giving customers this choice between ICE and EVs for some point of time. As charging infra builds up, customers start understanding value propositions around electric and so on.
So what's the next launch now that Scorpio N is already done with? What are you working
Well, we are
on?
right now, all the excitement is around the Born Electric Vision reveal that we're going to do in Banbury on 15th August. There's a huge amount of work because, a lot of people have been waiting to hear what our EV strategy is. And we've chosen not to break that up in bits. So 15th August.
Another Independence Day.
Another Independence Day.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m. India time is when we would break the story on the Born Electric strategy.
Any parting words?
We're very excited about the future, and I'm really glad you could come in and experience our Kandivali facility and drive in the Scorpio N, because unless you spend some time in these vehicles, you're always going to be a skeptic and wonder why are these doing so well. But it's only when you see...
I'm a sedan person and have always been, and it's always been puzzling to me as to why is it that people have, I wouldn't say newfound love, but why is it that everyone's buying SUVs now? But you know what, Rajesh, I'm totally convinced about Scorpio N, but the one thing which is very key for me is also how good is the music in the car.
Music is very important because that's part of, the Explore the Impossible, the fun,
experience.
And all of that. And we've, the high-end versions have this Sony 3D surround music system with multiple speakers all over.
Rajesh, such a pleasure.
Thank you
so much for taking the time out, inviting us to your beautiful Kandivali, facility, and more importantly for the fabulous ride in the brand new Scorpio N. Thank you.
Thank you so much.